there is a fundamental principle here that I think is really important, Tim, which is we, especially as Christians, we can be very reactionary to things that have the appearance of evil. It might not even necessarily be evil, right? But we can be very reactionary to things that have the appearance of evil. And I'm going to use an example, and I don't mean to rub anybody the wrong way here, but my example is Harry Potter.
Hello, and welcome to Calvary Conversations, a ministry of Calvary University in Kansas City, Missouri. I'll be hosting today's episode. I'm Tim Hange, the head of the English department and of TESOL studies at Calvary, and I'm joined by my co-host, Josh Paxton, Dr. Josh Paxton, who is the head of intercultural studies at Calvary. And I can say right up front that we are both avid gamers, and that I think we're decidedly cooler than the other two hosts of Calvary Conversations.
I would agree.
No, I think that's without dispute. So, I mean, if they want to do an episode on it, or if they want to get together and kind of fight back against us,
they can dispute that if they want. But I mean, just the fact that we're having a conversation about gaming makes us cooler. So we're clearly cooler. Okay, so today's conversation is about gaming, and it's about some of the potential hazards and pitfalls of gaming. And it's a follow-up to our last episode on gaming, which if you haven't watched, I highly advise that you do. Now, I know the description says something about video gaming. It is mostly actually about tabletop gaming. Josh and I, though we do play some video games, we mostly are tabletop gamers. I will say that it has nothing to do with the fact that I'm older and my reflexes aren't as good, and so I can't keep up with the young guys. But anyway, no, we both really enjoy tabletop gaming, and so we talked a lot about the benefits of tabletop gaming. We talked about building community, about how a lot of the gaming that we do is actually really good for the mind. It's a great mental exercise. It's a great way to fellowship and community build as well, and in some cases, a great way to explore historical themes and topics with historical games. Did I miss anything there, Josh? Is that pretty much the scope of benefits we covered? Yeah, I think that's pretty much the areas that we covered. We talked a little bit about outreach, evangelistic possibilities, and those kind of things. But yeah, I think you hit it.
Good deal. So today we are going to explore some of the pitfalls of gaming, which should be really short because there aren't any, right? I mean, no, there are. We gamers do have to be careful of some things, and I think it's important that non-gamers understand too what are the real pitfalls and what maybe are fake pitfalls. And we'll be talking about some of those things today too. So let's begin with this is sort of an obvious pitfall, but let's talk about balance in terms of time. Josh, I've been told this before, especially as a young person. All that time you're spending video gaming or board gaming or playing D&D with your friends, like that time should really be better spent doing things of eternal value, things that are ministry related. Instead of spending an hour playing video games, what if you had spent that hour in the Word of God? So how would you respond to somebody who sort of criticizes your time gaming with comments like that?
Well, I guess my first response, would be immediately to, if somebody were to say that to me, maybe I just spent an hour playing a video game, a role-playing game, etc. But in asking me this question, how do you know that I didn't also spend an hour in my Bible leading up to that time, and or even after that, right? Time is not something that we can always consistently are doing the same thing. Like throughout the day, we may do 20 different things with our time, or 50 different activities, and so it doesn't automatically follow that time spent gaming should have been replaced by this, or that somehow I'm not spending time in the Word because I'm spending time playing a game. Like those right. Two things don't automatically equate to one another. So at the same time, clearly, Scripture presents us a biblical concept of rest. And rest can fall under a lot of categories, frankly. I mean, rest could be spending time with other people if you're an extrovert instead of an introvert like me. Or rest could be, spending time in God's word. It could be spending time playing music, singing, doing a hobby. It could be time spent playing a game. For me, I mean, just to get a little bit personal, but for me as an introvert, I need alone time. I need time to do something by myself. And so thankfully, there are some games that I enjoy that allow for that. Other games are obviously focused on community. Tabletop games, etc., are usually focused on one-on-one interaction or with a group. But even for an introvert, that could still be rest time to a certain degree because of how I'm spending it. But yes, managing your time is very important. However, I mean, that's just a general principle, right, Tim? We need to be careful in how we manage our time, and gaming is not the only area where we can fall into difficulties with managing our time.
And that's true, and that's something that people who criticize gaming, I think, need to keep in mind. Now, I'm not trying to justify one wrong behavior with other wrong behavior, but it is fascinating to me that there are people who would spend hours and hours on reading the sports stats online and watching game highlights, etc., who would criticize gamers for the time that they spend gaming, right? And I think in both activities, you need to be very careful, to not let things consume our time. There are people who would criticize people for, spending hours on end playing video games, but then think nothing of binge watching a show, or spending 20 hours on a weekend binge watching a show, right? So
yes,
this is, and I've done that. So so Josh and I, well, I can't really speak for Josh as much. I can speak for myself. Like, I've gone to extremes on gaming before, right? And in fact, I've had to make decisions. This is a while back. For those of you who maybe remember, like, World of Warcraft first came out. I mean, before then, we had like some online fantasy games. I was playing a lot of online first-person shooters and real-time strat games. StarCraft was my jam back then, and I was spending too much time doing that. I spent way too much time playing StarCraft, but when those things came out and I saw how addictive they were, I thought, I'm not even starting. And so I have never joined an MMORPG, which is massively multiplayer online role-playing game, or MOBA community, massive online battle arena community, for those very reasons, because I 100% know that would suck up all my time and I would do nothing else. The other reason that I actually do tabletop gaming more so than board gaming now is because it forces me to get other people around the table.
Yeah.
And that means that what I'm doing has a community value and is more useful than me just sitting there playing Civilization 6 for hours and hours on end, which I could do, right? So
agreed. Although with the prevalence of some online games today, it is possible to play a game and still have kind of a community around you while you are doing that. But yeah, I agree. I mean, my tendency, especially in playing video games, would be to just play myself. I didn't really like the online method of doing things, and especially younger, as a college student myself, it would be nothing for me to spend 4 or 5 hours or more on a weekend playing one of the Total War games, video games, if you're familiar with that series. And so yeah, there's definitely been time periods in my life where I haven't managed my time well. But managing our time is true of anything. Just like you said, spending hours reading the sports page or whatever it is. And this is, let me throw out the caution there. This is not two nerds trying to pick on the jocks. But definitely our culture looks more favorably upon those kind of sports activities versus esports or spending time playing games, etc.
Right.
Although the cultural preference for esports is kind of switching a little bit, like that is becoming a lot more popular these days. But anything has the potential to take too much of your time if you let it. And so maybe the real issue in that first point is just managing your time well, setting limits, setting time limits, having a schedule for when you might do something versus doing another activity, especially, I'm a dad with 3 young boys. And so I like spending time in my hobby room, building models and things like that. But I need to set limits because I can't wall myself off from my family all hours of the day such that they don't have a relationship with me in order to do this thing that I enjoy doing. So we got to have limits on how we do things like that.
And it's important, like, I'll say this too, because I've been known, like, there are certain games I've had to delete off of my tablet because they're so addictive to me. And it's just like, okay, just one more level, just one more level, just one more level. And I realize they're just designed.
Yes.
And you have to understand, I mean, surely anybody watching this knows this, who's at least familiar with gaming. Large game companies, they hire people to analyze what keeps the person engaged. Sort of like you have them do this thing, you make it just difficult enough for them to feel like it was a challenge, and then you reward them with something, and then it makes them want to do the next thing. And they're studying the psychology of the gamer, and their whole goal is to keep you on that app as long as they possibly can, so that you have a greater chance of doing an in-game purchase. Or so, like, we have to guard against that, guys. There are times when, just like you should let the fourth episode of something you've watched sit that night and say, it's okay for me to end on a cliffhanger. It will be okay. I don't have to watch the next episode, tonight. Given that I've watched 4 already, right? It's the same way with gaming. We have to be willing to put it down and engage our minds in important things too. The next question I have is about balance in terms of resources.
Yeah. Not just in-game resources, by the way, but real-life resources.
Oh, yeah, real-life resources. Although you can spend a lot of money on in-game resources, the real-life money on in-game resources too. But
that's true. Oh, okay. I have to pick on that one for a minute, especially when you said your comment about game designers hooking you and everything is like with everything else in life, especially games on your phones these days and everything. The game may be free, but then they hook you with all these extra things that you can buy to improve your progress in the game. So set limits. If you're going to do something like that, obviously don't go outside the realm of your budget, and use a lot of wisdom. And just like you said a minute ago, if you find yourself, this is too much, delete it.
Yeah.
Get rid of it.
Yep. So, as I think about the tabletop hobby, like, oh man, this is like public confession now, Josh. All right, I've gone down the.
It's okay. We're real people.
I've gone down the nerd.
I may be a doctorate. I may teach at a Christian school. You're about to have your doctorate. You teach at a Christian school. It's okay. We're real people.
Like, there are these collectible card games and they're designed like they sell you these starter decks, and Magic is the big granddaddy of them, right? And that's the one that has actually held its value for all these years. So it's a little more justifiable. But if you want to build a tournament worthy deck in Magic, I mean, it depends on what format you play, but especially if you're playing open format, you're gonna spend $3,000-$4,000 on a deck of cards.
Yeah.
Because there are going to be single cards that cost $200 or $300 that you're going to need to include to make a strategy work, and you're going to need to buy the official card and not have some copy, right? So It's really
Let me
easy.
stop you for just 1 second, because I can anticipate that there are viewers listening to us right now who are saying $200, $300 on a card to play this game. And my immediate thought is, when was the last time you walked into a sports memorabilia shop and you saw how much people pay for baseballs and bats, etc., that are all right? So same difference. So,
yeah, thank you for putting the nerdiness into some perspective there. But like I do know people who have like literally been behind on rent or college tuition payments. Not at Calvary, actually, and this wasn't at Calvary, but this is more when I was young. Like I know people who got so out of control with investing money into buying more packs and opening them, seeing if they get the cards they need, etc. It's easy to drop big money on it's not uncommon to drop $10,000 on racks of cards when you're a Magic player. So
looking for that one special one.
Right. So I don't know, like what would you say, Josh, to to people who are spending lots of money on the hobby?
You need to budget. You need to budget. You just like anything else. I'm not going to say don't spend money on your hobby, and or any other. It's not just gaming. Like, this is not an issue only for gaming, right? This is an issue. I mean, managing our finances well is an issue, whether your hobby is a sport or working on your car, souping up your car, something like that. Fixing up your house. People can spend a ton of money on fixing up their house with things that aren't technically necessary, so to speak, or improving their yard. We can spend money on all kinds of quote unquote frivolous things, like important to you but maybe frivolous to the next person over. And so it's, regardless of what the situation is, you got to have a budget. You need to have a budget. If you're married, you need to sit down with your spouse. You need to decide, what is our budget going to be on these particular items, and then don't go over your budget. You have to stick to it. That's I mean, I'm I'm right here for you, Dave Ramsey. But it's the same with anything in life, right? Whether it's movies, entertainment, going out, spending money on food. Have a budget each month for how much you're willing and able to spend on this hobby, and don't cross the line.
And I would say too, like, and this is something I faced, and I have a rather sizable board game collection. Now, I do. I mean, if you're to come to my house, you would say,
anyone wants to invest, we're totally open to starting a board game cafe. I'm just throwing that out. just lob anybody, whoever wants to grab.
Oh boy. We could. I actually could with the collection I have. I mean, it's over 500 games. But I also I sell games a lot on eBay to people who are when they go out of print, to people who really want to find that particular game. And it's not uncommon for me to take a game that I spent $30 on 2 or 3 years ago and sell it for $150 to somebody who is, looking for that particular thing, because it's out of print now. But that does bring me into like another thing that I would suggest this gamers watch out for, which is, and it's the abbreviation is FOMO, fear of missing out.
Yeah.
That can be such a compulsion, like, oh, the new set of this game is coming out, you got to get it, and then you get that, and like the next month it's like the new set of this game is coming out, you need to invest in this so that you can get your gaming capabilities up to this, and this has an ability that you don't have, and and so it's really easy to get obsessive. And if you have that kind of personality, be very careful. Have somebody hold you accountable, even if you just need to say, look, I need to set a budget of $50 a month or whatever it is, and your primary game, you play what's called a lifestyle game. right?
So yeah, I mean, on that note, right, we revealed this in our last video, but I play a game called Warhammer 40K. It's a tabletop game with little miniatures. It's a hobby. I mean, it's a hobby as much as it is the actual game. There are people out there who do the hobby side of it. They build miniatures and paint them, and they never actually play the game that goes along with it.
That's
and you have to set limits. There's a very real, like within that community, there is a very real thing called your pile of shame. This is actually your pile of shame this is an actual term that people use to refer to the models that they have, the hobby that they have not built yet. And I've seen some people share some collections on Facebook where they've got some pretty good piles of shame. I mean, they've got boxes and boxes and boxes. And when you're talking about hobby kits that, can cost $60 to $70. And so here you've got a stack, $60 to $70 each. Like, I mean, that stack might represent $500. So here's a good point. One of my ways of kind of managing my hobby and my investment is not to buy anything new until I have made what I have. Just as a general rule. That's a general rule. I'm not going to go out and I will not let my pile of shame, become a pile.
What if that new set just came out and it's on sale right now and it's being bought up, so it might get snatched up and be out of print in 2 weeks, and then you'll have to wait another year until the re-release?
Oh well, to be honest, I'm actually dealing with that right now, because there was a box set that was released and I wanted to grab it and I hesitated, and now it is gone. So this box set with its release price, all right, it's you can find it on eBay and Amazon now, but it's $100 more expensive because they're not making it anymore. So and so that it's, oh well, I mean, I missed it. It's move on. It's so and
life will go on and you'll be okay. That's what I have to remind myself too,
Life will go on. So you missed
the deal. It's okay.
Yes, life will go on. It will be perfectly fine. I did not have to have this, and I certainly didn't need to buy it when I already have, these things sitting here waiting to be built and played with. Yeah.
So let me switch gears a bit to our final kind of subtopic in this discussion, which is we're talking about potential pitfalls of gaming. And there is a criticism, although, okay, bluntly, you and I will tend to react to this criticism because in a negative way, right?
Yeah.
There's been a lot of criticism within the church about, like, Dungeons and Dragons, and it's all evil and it's all, terrible, and role-playing games are just,
there is, I mean, we would also want to acknowledge that, yes, these things have definitely been abused. So not all of that criticism is invalid.
Not all of it is invalid, but not all of it is well-informed.
This is also true. Yes,
right.
This is also
by
true.
People who, like, I hear people criticize D&D who've never sat down to actually look at what a role-playing game is and does, or who could not possibly see past the fact that something is a role-playing game to weigh its possible merits.
There's a fundamental principle here that I think is really important, Tim, which is we, especially as Christians, we can be very reactionary to things that have the appearance of evil. It might not even necessarily be evil, right? But we can be very reactionary to things that have the appearance of evil. And I'm going to use an example, and I don't mean to rub anybody the wrong way here, but my example is Harry Potter. And the reaction from a lot of believers to those books and that universe and magic and everything surrounding it was very reactionary before any of those people actually took the time to sit down and read the book. And I've taken the time to sit down and read the books. I enjoy those books because at the end of the day, whether this was intentional by the author or not, there are a lot of biblical themes in those books. And there's a reason for that, which I think we'll get to later. But we can be very reactionary.
Let's dive into that right now, because this is a super important aspect of this. One of the criticisms is, and I've had people get kind of upset even as they've looked at some games in my collection, to say, you have all these games that deal with magic, and here we're seeing these,
okay.
Game that I play called Aeon's End.
We're diving in, and audience, we know we want this to be a conversation. We know that some of you are not going to necessarily agree with us on some of these issues. Let me encourage you, if you don't agree with us when we talk about some of this, get a hold of us. Of us. Let's sit down and let's have a conversation. So
Yep. So like this game Aeon's End, everybody plays a mage, a magician, and there are all these like big baddie creatures that are coming up from the deep, and this big boss guy that's down there, and they're out to destroy the world. And we are here trying to protect the world from this evil that's coming up through. And so we cast these fire bolts, and yes, there's spells and their magic, etc., right? Into the breach, and we apply so much damage to this creature and this creature until we can all work together. And then it's a cooperative game. At the end of the game, when you finally defeat the thing, there's high fives all around, usually because it's a really tense game, right? It's a lot of fun to play. Why do I not have a problem with this? And there are people who would say, well, why Tim, are you open to playing a game that has magic in it? And Josh, I really just want to let you loose on the topic of magic in gaming. And how would you address that if somebody says that to you? Why would you play a game that depicts magic when there are biblical prohibitions against the use of things like witchcraft?
So, well, first of all, the biblical prohibitions against things like witchcraft have to do with real life. Have to do with people who are really in real life trying to manipulate reality through the use of spells or potions, or in some cases, appealing to spirits or even demonic powers in order to do that. That is very different. That is very different in my mind to a game, especially when I know there's no reality to this. It's just a game. Those are two very different things. So definitely Scripture does speak against trying to do things to manipulate the reality, trying to manipulate the material world, and those things are also typically juxtaposed against the fact that we are supposed to be submissive to God and his rule and authority, and we're not supposed to be trying to usurp him and his authority. He is God. He is the one who is in control, versus a game which we know as we're playing it has no impact upon real life. And so to me, this is very much, and I should say, I should also include in here, you and I are not trying to defend gaming by having this conversation. We're honestly trying to come to a balanced biblical approach to this topic. And so for me, this is very much like the meat sacrifice to idols issue that Paul talks about in 1 Corinthians 8. And so in 1 Corinthians 8, you have people who, everybody sits down to dinner and they put a plate of meat in front of you, and the host informs you this has been sacrificed to an idol. And you have some people who are believers who fundamentally understand that idol over there that this was sacrificed to is just a hunk of wood or stone or a lump of gold. It doesn't have any kind of power. It has no soul. There's absolutely nothing to it. So I can dive right into my steak and feel perfectly fine. And then you have other people who are sitting at that table who are convicted by that. They're not sure. Like, can I do this? And they're convicted by it. And at the end of the day, Paul's conclusion is, if the one who wants to eat it is fine with eating it, they can eat it. If the one who doesn't want to eat it it's fine for them not to eat it. They should do whatever is consistent with their own conscience.
And let's be clear about this, because what he's saying is that act of eating that meat is neither morally valid or invalid. It's a morally neutral thing, right?
Yes.
And what Josh and I are suggesting, and the reason why I don't have an issue with this, is playing a game in which some universe exists where there's powers that you can just tap into and send stuff is morally neutral. Now, if the game said, oh, you have to summon this demon to get his powers and sell part of your soul to do, I'd be like, no.
Well, or even, a perfect example would be a Ouija board.
Right.
So that's, that kind of crosses the line, because now we're dealing with something that isn't necessarily just a game. Now we are dealing with something that actually purports to tap into spiritual power, spiritual influence of some sort. That's crossing the line.
Yeah. The other place where I cross the line, I don't know how you feel about this one, but is when games have you playing the bad guys. So like there's a game I play called Eldritch Horror, and it's based on the horror stories of H.P. Lovecraft. And these things called Cthulhu are coming up and trying to take, there's weird octopusy tentacly beings that try to take over the world. And, there's this dark spiritual overtones to them as well. But we are the investigators and we're stomping it out. Like, we're trying to save the world. There's also a game, though, called Cthulhu War that is where you get to be the bad guys trying to take over the world. I'm just like, okay, that's just kind of creepy. Like, no, I just, the idea of like, taking joy and, I just stamped out New York, and playing these bad characters and these evil characters to do that doesn't motivate me. And I've always had difficulty playing any kind of game where I'm supposed to be the bad guy. And I'm not like that. Even Disney's villainous game, and I have that. I know it's just sort of like mild.
I've seen that. I've not tried it.
But it's just like, you're playing the villain, and I'm just sort of like, I'm not wild about that. So like, that's a personal line.
Although it's
me.
Interesting. It's interesting to note that lately Disney has been working very hard at turning their villains into good guys in strange ways. But I agree. So we have Monopoly Cheaters Edition. And
this is a good discussion.
The whole idea behind Monopoly Cheaters Edition is that in order to win the game, you're supposed to cheat. So
this takes it a step further, because in the real world you're cheating. It's not like in the fantasy world you're cheating. In the real world you're cheating, but it's part of the game.
Yeah, you are encouraged to cheat at the game. Now the irony, so because of that, my wife will not play it. She just adamantly refuses to play the game. And honestly, we haven't played it in a long time, because we got it and then we played it a few times and we were like, what are we teaching our kids with this? But what's hilarious is even Monopoly Cheaters Edition still has rules about how and when you can cheat. So are you actually cheating, or are you just following the rules about when you're allowed to cheat? It's really interesting.
But there are bluffing games, like we play one called Sheriff of Nottingham, and we have a lot of friends who like this game. But the whole goal is that you put some cards that represent goods inside a bag, and some of them you try to slip contraband in there, and then you put it in front of the player who's playing the sheriff, and you very often lie about what's in the bag, and
Okay, so you're talking about bluffing. Poker, anybody? That's 99% of the game, isn't it?
So, right. Yeah. And so, but I have encountered people who say I won't play this game because it requires me to lie in real life, and I just won't lie in real life.
And I agree. I mean, so just again, another example. Right. So I play Warhammer 40K. I have my main factions in that game. I play 2 human factions, the Space Marines. The faction that I play is the Salamanders, which in the lore is the only genuinely good Space Marine faction. Like the whole universe is a humongous shade of gray. I also play the Grey Knights, but in this game you can also play factions like orcs and more evil things. And so that includes the main antagonist within the game is Chaos. Chaos is represented by 4 chaos gods, and I will not do that. I won't do that. Yeah. I will not play one of those factions because that's, for me, that's going too far. That's playing something that now represents evil, and living that out on the tabletop is a line that I will not cross.
It's like playing a chaotic evil character in D&D, choosing that as your attributes. And I'm just like, I'm just not, that's not something I'm comfortable with. But yet, look, people say, like, here's a good counter to that, right? And like, people would say, well, you would watch a movie like Ocean's 11 where the bad guys, the people doing the thieving, are essentially glorified.
Are actually the good guys, yeah.
Yeah, and it's sort of like, okay, that's true. Like, and that's probably not consistent even. But it does, if these are things we have to think about in gaming. Make the choice according to our conscience as the scripture directs us, but let that be informed. Let that truly be a choice of conscience. Don't just say, oh, well, as long as I choose it, it's okay. As long as I, because I've seen people make some pretty weird decisions.
I mean, definitely scripture does give us principles, clear principles for how we are supposed to live our lives and conduct ourselves. And so even in that, if I were to, Warhammer 40K is very much a social community game. You play with other people, you have tournaments, etc. If I were, so let's say I played a chaos faction as a Christian, and now I'm going to a tournament, and as a Christian, I'm playing a faction which is evil and chaotic, and the person I'm playing against knows that I am a Christian. All right, now that's just okay. That's kind of getting into some areas of who am I actually representing in this that I'm just not comfortable with. So definitely there are principles there that we should follow, and we should let our conscience guide us. And at the same time, Paul goes one step further in 1 Corinthians 8 to talk about how if I'm aware that my exercise of my freedom is a stumbling block to somebody else, then I need to be careful how I exercise my freedom.
Right. And I realize in some ways I'm publicizing what I normally keep quiet, but like I have a back closet that I keep some of my games in that have like that Aeon's Endgame has like these scary, creatures depicted, and these mages, on the outside, even though my conscience lets me play that because it is essentially a struggle against good versus evil. And because the magic is presented in a way that it's just sort of this neutral energy, right? I realize that not everybody who comes to my house is going to look at that box and reach those same conclusions. So why cause them to stumble? Just put it in the closet, and then when I'm around people that I know, are into that kind of game, I'll pull it out and play it. Right? I don't need to display my most controversial stuff, right? And you want to be sensitive to other people too. That's what Paul is saying. There's a law of love here at play, that we want to be loving in our game choices, not sort of goading somebody and say, oh, why do you think it's wrong? Oh, it's no big deal. Oh, you're being such a prude. That kind of thinking shouldn't manifest itself in our words and in our relationships.
Yeah. We should also make clear, just as another thing, we're not trying to advertise any of the things that we're playing. We're not trying to we're not trying to necessarily condone those or encourage somebody to get involved in them, so much as just these are examples of how we have worked these questions out in our own life, how we have struggled with being believers and living according to a biblical worldview and living that life in our culture.
Mm-hmm. So we should probably wrap this up. But I would just say, Josh, and I would say just as final words, and then I'll give you the final words.
Okay.
Just enjoy gaming, guys, but enjoy it. I sound like an alcohol commercial. Enjoy it responsibly. But I mean, it's true. Enjoy it responsibly. Enjoy gaming responsibly, and just keep in mind why you're doing what you're doing. Let it be part of your rest, but don't let it be an obsession. Let it be part of your social life, and also just think carefully. Make decisions about the content. Don't just blindly play without thinking about what you're playing. Josh, any final words to our gaming and non-gaming audience here?
I think you summed it up really well. Be responsible in the use of your time. Set limits. Have boundaries, which is true of anything in life. Be responsible in the use of your finances. Have a budget, and be conscious to stick to your budget. If you have, and this is true of any area of life, if you have weaknesses, if you you have a tendency to go too far or obsess over something, then ask other people in your life to hold you accountable. I mean, ask other people to speak into your life and hold you accountable to when you might be going too far in something. And then, just like 1 Corinthians 8, just like Paul says in 1 Corinthians 8, consider your conscience. Don't violate things that you actually think are bad just because somebody else says they're okay or they're good.
Right. Very good. Very good. Well, thank you all so much for watching today. We have appreciated the feedback that we've gotten actually on the first episode. I hope that you guys feel free to reach out to us about this one as well. And we just encourage you, wherever you watch this, engage in the conversation through the comments. Feel free to contact us. You can find our contact info on Calvary University's website. We do want this to be a conversation, and we hope that this sparks a good conversation in your communities as well with the people that you are with. So thank you again, and we'll see you next time on Calvary Conversations.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thank you for joining us for this edition of Calvary Conversations, a service of Calvary University in Kansas City, Missouri. We invite you to participate in the conversation by contacting us through the Calvary University website, calvary.edu, or by calling us at 816-322-0110. Join us again next week for another Calvary Conversation.